What are you even doing here? You weren't invited yesterday. Her words sliced through the garden party like a blade, and suddenly every guest stopped eating, their eyes locked on me. I just gave a sweet smile at my son's bride, the same woman I'd spent $38,000 supporting. I'll leave, I said, but first, let me introduce you to someone very special, someone who knows you far better than you think. And when Jessica saw who stepped up behind me, her face drained whiter than that pricey wedding gown of hers, right before her champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered. Now, before I tell you the whole story, I just want to say thank you for being here with me. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and let us know where you're watching from. We might just give you a shout out in the next video. Today's special shout out goes to Kelly Johnson from Georgia. Thank you for being part of our family. Anyway, let me go back to the beginning. It all started about 8 months ago when my son Michael brought home the sweetest liar I'd ever laid eyes on. My name's Linda Parker, though everyone just calls me Linda. And up until last Saturday, I truly believed I was helping plan the most beautiful wedding for my only child. I had emptied my savings, sold my car, and even borrowed money from my sister to give Michael and Jessica the day she always said she dreamed of. The venue was Maplewood Manor with a gorgeous lake view. Her gown was $8,000 and needed 4 fittings. The flowers? $1,500 worth of pink roses from a fancy florist in the city. I paid for every single thing because Jessica had told me with such sadness that her parents had died in a car accident when she was little. My heart ached for this girl who had no family to lean on for her special day. She even asked if she could wear my mother's diamond bracelet, a piece that had been in our family for 3 generations. "Oh, Mrs. Parker," she had whispered, tears glistening in her eyes, "you're like the grandmother I never had." What a huge lie that turned out to be. Michael was madly in love, and honestly I could understand why. Jessica was stunning in that movie star kind of way. Shiny brown hair, sparkling green eyes, the sort of looks that made men forget the world around them. She worked at the local animal shelter, volunteered at the food pantry, and talked so sweetly about wanting babies that I'd already begun dreaming of great-grandchildren. Still, something never sat quite right with me. Her stories about her childhood always seemed a little off. She claimed she'd lived in all these different towns, but whenever I asked for details she never had much to say. And she always carried cash, saying she didn't trust banks or credit cards. I kept trying to push that nagging feeling aside, because Michael was happier than I'd seen him since his father passed away 5 years earlier. But then came the night when everything changed. And of course it happened by accident, like most earth-shattering truths do. I was dropping off some wedding decorations at Michael's house when I heard Jessica talking loudly on the phone in the kitchen. Something in her tone made me stop just short of the doorway instead of walking in like I usually would. "Tommy, I told you never to call me here," she snapped. "Yes, the wedding's still happening next week. And yes, once we're married I'll be able to get into his bank account." "What do you mean you want more money?" "We agreed 25%, no more." My heart nearly stopped. I pressed myself against the wall, grateful that Michael's old house had thin walls, because that meant I could hear every ugly word. "Listen," she went on, "the old woman's already given us almost $40,000, and she'll probably hand over even more once we ask for money for a house after the wedding. This guy's worth at least $150,000, maybe more if we play it right. No, he doesn't suspect a thing. He believes every single word I tell him." She called my son this guy like he was nothing more than a mark. That was all I needed to hear. I pulled back from the door as quietly as I could, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the box of decorations I was holding. Somehow I made it to my car, but once I sat inside I couldn't even start the engine. I just sat there shaking, trying to breathe. Suddenly, everything clicked. The cash-only habits, the strange stories that never added up, the way she had slowly pulled Michael away from his friends by claiming they didn't understand their love. She had even convinced him to add her name to his checking account and to take out more life insurance, all because they were planning their future together. I cried hot, angry tears right there in the car, feeling like the biggest fool in town. But after a while something shifted inside me. That same strength I had years ago when I fought the hospital to get my husband proper care during his final illness, came rushing back. If Jessica Grant thought she could break my son's heart and steal our money, she had chosen the wrong family. But I knew I needed proof, hard evidence that Michael couldn't ignore. So I drove home, sat down at my computer, and did something I never imagined I'd do at my age. I started looking up private investigators. The very next morning, I met with Sarah Mitchell at a small coffee shop downtown. Sarah had once worked for the police before opening her own practice, and she specialized in cases exactly like mine. She was about the same age as my daughter, but the serious look in her eyes gave me instant confidence. "Mrs. Parker," she said after I poured out everything, "what you're describing sounds like a classic romance scam, with a wedding twist. These people are professionals. They study their targets, figure out what they want to hear, and then become exactly that person." I slid a check across the table. "How long will it take?" Sarah gave me a smile that wasn't at all warm. "For someone careless enough to use her real voice where you could overhear? Not very long." 10 days later my phone rang. Sarah's voice was sharp and serious. "Linda, you'd better sit down for this. Jessica Grant doesn't exist. The woman your son is about to marry is actually named Rachel Evans, and she has a very ugly past." I was standing in my kitchen making lunch when she called, and I had to grip the counter just to keep from collapsing. "Tell me everything," I whispered. "Rachel Evans. 26. Originally from Cleveland. She's been arrested twice in the last 3 years for financial scams and convicted once. She works with partners, usually men, who help her find victims and sometimes pose as family members to make her lies more believable." My sandwich was burning on the stove, but I couldn't move. "The man you overheard on the phone, Jason? That's Jason Lee, her boyfriend. They worked together until about a year ago when she apparently stole $12,000 from him and vanished. He's been hunting her ever since." I finally reached over and turned off the stove, my hands moving on autopilot while my brain spun in circles. "How did you dig all this up?" I asked. Sarah chuckled softly. "The magic of computer programs, and a little good old-fashioned detective work. Rachel's been living under the name Jessica Grant for 6 months, complete with fake papers and a fake work history. That animal shelter job? She volunteers there just twice a month, barely enough to look legit if anyone checks." I dropped into a chair, my body heavy. "Sarah, I need you to find Jason Lee." There was silence on the other end. Then she asked, "Linda, what exactly are you planning?" "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that a man who's been chasing Rachel for a year might be very interested in attending her wedding." For the first time, Sarah actually sounded impressed. "You want to bring him to the ceremony?" Sarah asked. "I want Rachel to get exactly what she deserves," I said, my voice steady even though my insides were shaking. "Can you track him down?" "Already did. He's in Phoenix working at an auto shop. I can get you his number within the hour." After I hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen for a long time staring at nothing. Part of me wanted to rush straight to Michael and spill every detail Sarah had uncovered. But I knew my boy. He had his father's stubborn streak, and Rachel had been weaving her lies around him for months. She'd probably already warned him that if anyone spoke against her, it was just jealousy, or me trying to control his life. No, I needed something bigger. Something undeniable. Something that would leave no room for excuses or tricks. The wedding was only 8 days away, and I was going to make sure it was unforgettable, for all the right reasons. That afternoon I called Jason Lee. "Jason Lee speaking," he answered, his tone guarded, professional. I'd caught him on a break at the garage in Phoenix. "Mr. Lee, my name is Linda Parker. I think you know my son's fiancée. You knew her as Rachel Evans, not Jessica Grant." The silence was so long I thought he'd hung up. Then finally, "Where is she?" "She's about to marry my son in our hometown in just 7 days. She's already stolen more than $35,000 from us, and she's planning to take a whole lot more." I kept my voice calm, businesslike. "I think we can help each other." Another pause. Then he said, "Lady, I don't know what you're pulling, but she told her partner that your son was worth at least 150 grand. She's going after his bank accounts and she'll probably disappear in a few months." "I know," I told him quietly. "Sound familiar?" The sharp breath on the other end told me everything. "You overheard her talking to Jason," he said. "That's me. We used to work together until she took 12 grand from me and vanished. Left me flat with nothing." "Then you understand why I'm calling," I said. "Mrs. Parker, what do you want me to do?" I had been turning this idea over in my head for hours like a puzzle piece that finally clicked. She's having a big fancy wedding with 200 guests. What if her past came walking through the doors in the middle of her happiest moment? "You want me to crash the wedding?" There was a flicker of respect in his voice. I want you to show everyone exactly who she really is, in front of all the people she's lied to. Most of all, in front of my son before she destroys his life. Jason went quiet for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was sharper, harder. She took $12,000 from me and disappeared in the night. Left me with a hotel bill and a rental car I couldn't pay for. I've been hunting her for a year. Then this is your chance, I said. And what's in it for you? Besides saving your son? I almost smiled, though he couldn't see it. Justice, Mr. Lee. Simple, honest justice. We stayed on the phone for another 15 minutes, hammering out the details. Jason would drive in on the morning of the wedding and wait in the parking lot until I texted him. By then, Rachel had already convinced Michael to uninvite me, claiming I was trying to ruin their happiness. But I had my own ways of getting into Maplewood Manor, ways that didn't involve the front door. When I finally set the phone down, I realized I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The helpless anger was gone, replaced with something far more satisfying. A plan. The next few days flew by as I prepared. I canceled my hair appointment and my dress fitting. If I was going to be banned from my own son's wedding, then I sure wasn't about to waste time getting dolled up for it. Instead, I turned my attention to other things, like making sure the wedding ended up with some very expensive problems. 2 days before the big day, I made phone calls that would have impressed a corporate executive. The first one was to the event planner at Maplewood Manor. Mrs. Johnson, this is Linda Parker, mother of the groom for the Parker Grant wedding on Saturday. Oh, Mrs. Parker. So lovely to hear from you. I hope you're excited for the big day. If only she knew. Actually, I'm calling because there's been a change in who's handling the payments. The bride's family has decided to take care of the final balance after all. I let my voice carry that sweet grandmotherly warmth event planners adore. It's just so wonderful when families work things out, don't you agree? That's wonderful news. So I should expect payment from them directly. Oh yes. They'll be handling everything now. In fact, I'd wait before processing any charges to my account until you've heard from the Grant family. Then I gave her the fake phone number Sarah had confirmed Rachel was using for all the wedding businesses. They're very particular about managing their own finances. The second call went to the florist, the third to the caterer, the fourth to the photographer. Each conversation played out the same. The bride's family was taking over the bills, they were thrilled to be reconnecting with their daughter, and they couldn't wait to make her day perfect. Of course, the Grant family didn't exist. And Rachel would have no idea those businesses were calling a phone number she never answered. By Saturday morning, Maplewood Manor would be staring down one very expensive mess, with no quick solution in sight. But the most important call I made was to Michael. Mom, he said, his voice weary and tight. I really can't talk right now. Jessica's upset that you skipped the rehearsal dinner last night. Oh, Michael, sweetheart, I completely understand Jessica's feelings. I let my voice be soft, the kind of soothing tone that had carried him through scraped knees and broken hearts for 32 years. I've been thinking, and maybe I was too involved in planning. This is Jessica's special day, and if my presence would cause stress, then of course I should respect that. I paused just long enough for the words to land. I love you too much to risk spoiling your happiness. Mom, his voice cracked. Are you sure? Jessica might change her mind if you called her. Oh darling, that's not necessary. You know what? I think I'll take a little trip this weekend. Maybe head up to the mountains, do a little shopping, just give you two the space to enjoy your day without any family drama. The relief in his voice nearly broke my heart. That's really kind of you, Mom. I just want you to be happy, sweetheart. That's all I've ever wanted. When I hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. That call had been necessary, but it stung more than I expected. Michael truly believed I was the problem, that my doubts about Jessica came from jealousy or control, instead of a mother's instinct. Well, by Sunday morning he'd know the truth. Friday evening Rachel called me herself. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Mrs. Parker? It's Jessica. Her voice was syrupy sweet with just the right hint of sadness. I just wanted to thank you for being so understanding about tomorrow. Not at all, dear. I understand completely. I matched her tone perfectly. A bride should feel completely comfortable on her wedding day. That's so kind of you. Michael said you're going to the mountains for the weekend. Fishing for information. Classic move. That was her plan, pretending to be sweet, while I played the part of the understanding mother-in-law on a little getaway. Well, I hope you have a wonderful trip, Rachel said smoothly. And Mrs. Parker, once Michael and I are settled, maybe we could have lunch. I'd really like us to be close. The nerve was unbelievable. That sounds lovely, Jessica, I replied with perfect warmth. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it toward my reflection in the kitchen window. Here's to family and friends, I said softly. May they get exactly what they deserve. Saturday morning dawned gray and cloudy, the kind of weather photographers call moody, and brides call a disaster. I woke up at 4:32 a.m. too wired to sleep, and spent the morning preparing for what might be the smartest, or the most disastrous, day of my life. At exactly 8 o'clock, Jason Lee called from a gas station 15 minutes outside town. I'm here, Mrs. Parker. You sure about this? I looked at myself in the hallway mirror, wearing a simple navy dress and my mother's diamond bracelet, the very one Rachel had once begged to borrow. I've never been more sure of anything, I said. What if your son never forgives you? He asked quietly. It was the question I had been pushing away for days. Then at least I'll have saved him from a woman who would have destroyed him, financially and emotionally. Sometimes love means being the villain in someone's story until they're ready to see the truth. There was a pause. Then Jason chuckled. You're tougher than you sound. Mr. Lee, I told him, I raised a son, buried a husband, and survived 72 years in small-town America. I'm tougher than I look too. The wedding was set for 1 o'clock with the reception to follow in Maplewood Manor's big ballroom. I had it all planned out. Jason would park at the venue by 12:30 and wait for my signal. I'd slip in through the garden entrance, a path I knew well from all those planning visits, and find a place to watch. By 10 o'clock my phone was buzzing nonstop. The florist, the caterer, the venue coordinator. Every one of them frantic, trying to reach someone from the Grant family about overdue payments. I let every call roll straight to voicemail. At 11:30 Michael called. His voice was tight. Mom, something weird is going on. All the vendors are calling Jessica about payments, but she swears she never told them her family was paying. Do you know what's happening? Oh my goodness, that does sound confusing, I said sweetly. What did Jessica say? She's upset. She thinks someone's trying to ruin the wedding. There was a pause. Mom, you wouldn't. Michael Parker, are you suggesting your mother would sabotage your wedding? I let my voice break just enough to sound wounded. After everything I've done to make this day perfect? No, I'm sorry. It's just Jessica's really stressed, and when people are stressed they look for someone to blame. Don't worry, sweetheart, I soothed. It's probably just a business mix-up. These things happen. The important thing is that today you're marrying the woman you love. If only he knew how true that was about to become. After hanging up, I checked my watch. Noon. Time to get ready for the show of a lifetime. I grabbed my purse, took a deep breath, and headed to my car. The drive to Maplewood Manor took 12 minutes through the old part of town. Big oak trees stretched over the street like umbrellas. And in spite of everything, a heaviness settled over me. Sadness that this beautiful place would forever remind me of lies instead of love. But Rachel Evans had made her choices. And now she was about to face the consequences. I parked 3 blocks away and walked toward the back entrance of Maplewood Manor, the one by the kitchen I'd noticed on my planning visits. The staff was too distracted with unpaid bills to notice one more older woman in a navy dress carrying a small bouquet. By 1:15 I was tucked behind a tall column at the rear of the ceremony space, watching my son's face shine with happiness as he waited for his bride. In 10 minutes that joy would shatter, and I would be the one holding the hammer. But sometimes I reminded myself as the music swelled, love means being strong enough to break someone's heart in order to save their life. The doors swung open and Rachel Evans, wearing her disguise as Jessica Grant one last time, began her walk down the aisle in her $8,000 gown, my mother's diamond bracelet glittering on her wrist. I pulled out my phone and sent Jason Lee a single word. Now. Jason strode through those same doors like a man with a mission. Dressed in his best suit, he walked straight down the aisle, radiating the kind of confidence only someone who's been hunting a target for a year can carry. Every head turned. Rachel's bouquet of pink roses slipped from her hands and smacked the marble floor with a sound like breaking glass. Rachel Evans. Jason's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. Did you really think you could hide forever? The chaos that followed was everything I had imagined, and more. Michael instantly stepped in front of his bride, his face twisted with confusion. "Sir, you've got the wrong person. This is Jessica Grant." Jason let out a laugh that held no trace of humor. "Jessica Grant? Is that what she's calling herself now?" He pulled a folder from his jacket. "Her real name is Rachel Evans and she's a professional con artist. I should know. I was her partner, until she stole $12,000 from me." "That's not true." Rachel's voice shot high and desperate. "Michael, I don't know this man. He's crazy." But I could see the cracks spreading. Her hands trembled. That syrupy voice had developed a sharp, jagged edge. The mask was slipping. Jason flipped open the folder and began holding up photographs. "Here's Rachel at the Grand Hotel in Miami, running a fake charity scam on retirees. Here she is in Birmingham, pretending to be ill so she could steal from church folks. And here's my favorite. Rachel leaving our hotel room in Memphis with my wallet, my credit cards, and the engagement ring I was stupid enough to buy her." Michael's face went pale. "Jessica, what is he talking about?" "He's lying." Rachel's voice cracked like thin glass. "Michael, you know me. We're getting married. I love you." "Love?" Jason barked. "Lady, you wouldn't know love if it punched you in the face. You want to hear what she really thinks about your precious Michael?" He raised his phone. "I've got recordings from when we worked together. Want to know what she called him? Her stupid mama's boy target." The crowd erupted into whispers, a low wave of shock rolling through the ceremony space. From behind my column, I watched my son's world collapse piece by piece, and even through my anger my heart ached for him. But Rachel wasn't done. "Even if any of that were true," she said, forcing her voice back into sugary sweetness, "people can change. I'm not that person anymore. Michael believes in second chances. Don't you, honey?" It was a masterstroke of manipulation, playing on Michael's kindness, daring him to choose between his faith in redemption and the ugly truth about the woman he loved. Unfortunately for Rachel, I'd made sure Jason carried one final weapon. "Second chances?" Jason sneered. "Fine. Then tell him about the other man you're working on right now." Michael turned to his bride, and I saw the exact second when doubt clouded his eyes. "What is he talking about, Jessica?" I have no idea," she stammered, but her voice was too quick, too defensive. Jason glanced down at his phone. "Let me jog your memory. 2 weeks ago you called me asking for advice about your quote, remember? You said, and I've got the recording, that stupid old woman's already given me almost $40,000. Ring any bells?" The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Every single guest was staring at Rachel, waiting for her response. I watched my son's expression shift, confusion giving way to realization. My grip tightened on the marble column, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. That's taken out of context." Rachel's voice faltered, then cracked. "Context?" Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. "You called my mother a stupid old woman." "Michael, no, I didn't mean it that way. This man is trying to..." "Trying to what?" My son shot back, his voice rising. "Tell the truth." Anger was burning now, replacing confusion. "My mother gave us everything. She emptied her savings for this wedding. She borrowed money from her sister so you could have your dream ceremony." The guests were no longer whispering, they were silent, hanging on every word. Phones were raised everywhere, recording, even live streaming. I spotted Michael's college buddy near the front, his camera pointed directly at them. Jason wasn't done. "You want the real kicker?" he said coldly. "She was planning to drain your bank accounts and vanish within 4 months. That's her usual routine, long enough to get legal access to marital money, short enough not to get attached." "Stop it," Rachel begged. Her mask had shattered. Tears streaked her cheeks, though whether they were real or another performance no one could tell. Michael stepped back from her, his face twisted with disgust and betrayal. "Is it true? Any of it?" Rachel's eyes darted around, wild and desperate, searching for an escape. But the doors were blocked by guests pressing closer, hungry for the truth. The altar offered no safety. Finally, her gaze landed on me across the crowd. Recognition lit her eyes. He knew. She knew exactly who had orchestrated this downfall. "You," she hissed, pointing straight at me. "This was you." Every head turned. Suddenly I was no longer a hidden observer. I was the center of the storm. Michael's eyes went wide. Mom? What are you doing here? You said you were going to the mountains. I stepped out from behind the column, straightening my diamond bracelet with all the dignity I could muster. I lied, sweetheart. Something I learned from watching the experts. You set this up. His voice was a mix of shock and disbelief. I exposed it, I corrected gently. There's a difference. Rachel had found her footing again along with her weapon, manipulation. She's jealous, Michael. Your mother couldn't stand that you chose me over her. She hired this man to destroy our wedding because she wants to control your life forever. It was a clever move, playing straight into every ugly mother-in-law stereotype. And for just a heartbeat I saw doubt flicker across Michael's face again. 32 years of Rachel's rehearsed manipulation against 72 years of my love and sacrifice. Which story would Michael believe? His mother's, or hers? That's when Jason laid down his final card. Mrs. Parker didn't hire me, lady. I volunteered. He held up his phone. Want to hear the recording of our conversation 2 weeks ago? The one where you laughed about how easy it is to fool lonely old women and their devoted sons. The sound quality wasn't perfect, but Rachel's voice came through loud and clear. The old bat is so desperate for grandchildren she'll believe anything. And the son? Complete mama's boy. All I have to do is cry about my sad past and he writes another check. Michael's face drained white, then flushed red, then settled into a sickly gray that made me ache to rush to him. But this wasn't my moment to protect him. It was his moment to finally see. You want the best part? Jason continued. Rachel's recorded voice spilled into the silence. She gave me her mother's diamond bracelet, said it was a family treasure. I'll probably sell it after the honeymoon. Without thinking, Michael's eyes dropped to Rachel's wrist, where my mother's bracelet sparkled under the lights. The heirloom worn by 3 generations of Parker women, passed down as a symbol of acceptance and love. Rachel's hands flew to cover it as if hiding it could erase the truth. Michael, I can explain. Explain what? His voice was low and deadly calm. Explain how you laughed at my mother while spending her money? How you called me a mama's boy while pretending to love me? How you planned to rob us and vanish? The fight drained from Rachel in an instant. Her shoulders slumped, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked her actual age instead of the innocent young woman she pretended to be. It started as a job, she whispered. Just another target. But then, I thought maybe I could make it real. Real. Michael's voice cracked. Your name. Your job. Your family. Your whole life story. What was ever real about us? Rachel looked around the ceremony space at hundreds of shocked faces, the lavish flowers, the photographer still clicking, the videographer capturing every second of her humiliation. I need to leave, she muttered. Yes, Michael said simply. You do. But Rachel wasn't finished. As she gathered her gown, she turned back with eyes blazing. You think you've won, don't you? Congratulations, Mrs. Parker. You got your precious son back. But he's never going to trust another woman again after this. You've ruined him for love forever. At least now you'll always be the most important woman in his life. The words struck hard, making me falter for just a second. Was my pursuit of justice actually selfish? But Michael's voice came steady, strong. No, she didn't ruin me. You did. The difference? My mom was protecting me. You were destroying me. Rachel's face twisted with fury. You'll regret this. I have friends. Connections. This isn't over. Jason stepped forward, his expression almost amused. Actually, it is. While you've been busy putting on this little show, the police have been very interested in your fake social security number, your fraudulent work history, and your current scam. They're on their way. Rachel's face drained of color. You wouldn't dare. Already did, sweetheart. In fact, they should be here any minute. He checked his watch. I'm surprised they're not here yet. And then, right on cue, 2 officers entered the ceremony. They strode forward with the steady weight of authority, and Rachel's last hope of a graceful exit vanished. Rachel Evans, the taller officer announced, badge raised, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and violation of state banking laws. The scene that followed was surreal. Police reading Miranda rights beneath an arch of pink roses. Guests fumbling for their phones to capture history in the making. A bride in an $8,000 gown, led down the aisle in handcuffs. Rachel did not go quietly. She twisted in the officer's grip, screaming over her shoulder at Michael and me, "This is harassment. I've done nothing wrong. You'll hear from my lawyers." But no one believed her. Half the guests were recording and the rest were already texting the news. By nightfall, the video would be all over social media, tagged with things like #wedding-crash and #fake-bride-arrest. When the officers finally took her away, an eerie hush settled over the space. 200 wedding guests sat frozen, caught between shock, pity, and disbelief, unsure whether to leave, stay, or even clap. The minister stood frozen at the altar, looking like he'd never once trained for a situation like this. And Michael remained where he was, still in his tux, staring at the doors where his bride had just been taken away in handcuffs. I wanted to run to him, to hold him like I did when he was small, but I stopped myself. This was his moment, to process, to grieve, to decide what came next. Finally, Michael turned to the congregation. His voice carried across the stunned silence. "Well," he said, "this is awkward." A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the room. "I want to thank you all for coming. I know this isn't how you thought you'd spend your Saturday afternoon." He raked a hand through his hair, pausing. "The wedding is obviously cancelled. But the reception's already paid for, so if anyone wants dinner and an open bar, you're welcome to it. God knows I could use a drink." This time the laughter was real. Guests stood, stretched, and began breaking into little groups, talking in hushed tones. Through the commotion, Michael finally turned his eyes toward me. Gratitude, embarrassment, even something close to admiration flickered in his expression. Slowly he walked down the aisle. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. When he reached me, he stopped. Studied me. "Mom," he said at last, his voice raw, "we need to talk." I nodded. "Yes, we do." But then he reached for my wrist, gently unclasping the diamond bracelet. "First, this belongs to you." I held the bracelet in my hands, its weight so familiar it almost made me cry. "Actually, sweetheart, it belongs to the woman you'll marry one day, when you find someone worthy of it." His eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. For not believing you. For choosing her over you. For being such a fool." "You weren't a fool, Michael. You were in love. Or at least in love with who you thought she was." I reached up and straightened his tie, a gesture I'd been making since he was little enough for clip-ons. "Love makes us all vulnerable. What matters is you're safe." "How long did you know?" he asked. "I started suspecting 3 weeks ago. Got proof a week ago." I met his eyes. "I hired a private investigator. Jason. He showed up on his own when I told him where to find her. I guess hell hath no fury like a con artist scorned." Despite everything, Michael laughed. "You've been busy, haven't you? Let's just say it's been an educational few weeks." I took his arm. "Now, what do you say we go face the music at your non-reception? People are going to have questions." As we walked down the aisle together, I caught bits of conversation from the guests. Some were still shocked, some amazed, but I also heard genuine concern for Michael, and a surprising amount of respect for what they were calling my detective work. Mrs. Wilson from church grabbed my arm as we passed. "Linda Parker, you are one sharp lady. I never trusted that girl. Too pretty, too sweet. Real women have rough edges." And the reception that wasn't a reception turned out to be the most honest party I'd ever attended. Without the pretense of a wedding celebration, people relaxed in a way they never do at formal events. It wasn't the day I had once dreamed of, but maybe in its own strange way it was better. The bar opened early. The band switched from wedding classics to country songs. And the conversations carried a raw honesty that only comes after shared trauma. Michael carried himself with more grace than I could have hoped. He worked the room like a politician, thanking people for coming, apologizing for the drama, accepting sympathy with a smile that carried just enough humor to ease the sting. I watched him from across the ballroom, pride welling up in me. Not pride in his career or his choices, but in his character. My son was showing real strength under pressure. Jason Lee found me by the cake table, where I was quietly debating whether it was appropriate to eat wedding cake when there hadn't actually been a wedding. He extended his hand. "Mrs. Parker, thank you. You gave me the chance to face Rachel after all this time." I shook his hand firmly. "I should be the one thanking you. I couldn't have exposed her without your help. What you did took guts. Not many mothers would go that far. Any mother would have done it to protect her child." Jason shook his head. No, ma'am. Most would have tried to talk their son out of it and failed. You played chess while the rest of us were playing checkers. After he left, I found myself alone for the first time all day. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind exhaustion, and maybe a little sadness. I'd saved Michael from disaster, yes. But I'd also shattered his faith in love, at least for now. Having second thoughts? Michael appeared beside me holding 2 glasses of champagne. I accepted one gratefully, just wondering if there might have been a gentler way. You mean like you sitting me down and telling me my bride-to-be was a con artist? Because we both know how I'd have taken that news. He had a point. You would have thought I was jealous and controlling. I would have accused you of exactly what she claimed, that you wanted to keep me tied to you forever. He sipped his champagne, then added, You know what really convinced me? It wasn't Jason's folder or even the recordings. It was watching Rachel's face when she realized you had outplayed her. What did you see? I asked. Cold calculation, he said, and respect. Genuine respect. She underestimated you completely. She thought you were just a lonely old woman desperate to keep her son happy. She had no idea she was trying to con someone smarter than she was. I'm not sure about smarter, I said softly. Maybe just more motivated. Mom, you orchestrated the takedown of a professional scammer using her own ex-partner and the police. That wasn't just instinct. That was strategy. We stood together in a comfortable silence, watching family and friends relax into what had become a strangely honest celebration. The band had moved on to jazz and couples were dancing now, the tension slipping away. I have a confession, Michael said finally. What's that? Part of me is relieved. Not about the arrest or the public humiliation. But something always felt off about Jessica. I could never explain it. Sometimes when I caught her off guard, she looked like she was trying to remember who she was supposed to be. Why didn't you say anything? Because I told myself it was wedding stress. And because I was 32 and had never been in love before. I thought if I questioned it too hard it might vanish. My heart ached for him. Oh, sweetheart. Pathetic, right? The mama's boy who fell for the first pretty girl who paid him attention. No, I said firmly. Human. Wanting love doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And yes, sometimes we choose badly. Especially when the person across from us is a professional liar who studied exactly what to say. I squeezed his hand. You weren't gullible, Michael. You were targeted. He gripped my hand back. Thanks, Mom. For seeing her clearly. For protecting me. For making sure I couldn't ignore the truth. You're welcome. But next time you fall in love, introduce me earlier in the process. He laughed. Next time I fall in love, I'm running a background check first. That might be a little extreme. Not after today. He grinned. Besides, I've learned something very important about the women in my life. Oh, what's that? Never underestimate a Parker woman. Apparently you're a whole lot more dangerous than you look. I smiled, lighter than I'd felt in months. Your grandmother would have been proud. She'd have loved watching you handle today. Michael lifted his glass. Here's to justice. Served ice cold with a side of public humiliation. I clinked my glass against his. Here's to family, and knowing when to fight for the people you love. And in that moment, despite the lies, the betrayal and the public spectacle, I realized I was exactly where I was meant to be. Beside my son. Safe. Free. And finally seeing clearly again. Sometimes the best weddings are the ones that never happen. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments.